My deceptive wife accidentally left out proof that she's desperately in love with a heroic father who sacrificed his youth to raise me. My dad brought me up single-handedly in Southside Chicago. My mother walked out on us in 1999 when I was barely 5, and he never looked at another woman. He worked grueling 60-hour shifts as a diesel mechanic at a freight yard just to keep the heat on. While my friends went on family vacations, my dad was teaching me how to rebuild a transmission in our icy driveway so we wouldn't have to pay for repair. When I graduated with my master's in architecture, he wept in the auditorium. He sacrificed his personal life so I could have one. 5 years ago, I married Mara. She's a structural engineer, and she immediately hit it off with my dad over their shared love of load-bearing mechanics and commercial construction. She would spend hours at his cramped kitchen table, drafting blueprints and drinking cheap domestic beer until midnight. I thought it was beautiful, my wife bonding effortlessly with my solitary hero. She was always the one insisting we go over there for Sunday football, or offering to help him fix the roof on his back porch. 2 months ago, my dad dropped a bomb on us. At 58, he was officially selling his house, buying a luxury Airstream, and moving to off-grid land he bought in Montana. He was leaving Illinois forever. Mara acted incredibly strange about the announcement. She stopped eating, snapped at me over minor things, and claimed she was severely stressed about our upcoming real estate venture. Mara and I are exactly 11 days away from closing a $1.4 million commercial loan to open our joint firm. We leveraged everything we own, plus her parents' retirement fund, to secure the financing. Last Saturday was my dad's going away blowout at the local Elks Lodge. Around 9:30 p.m., the DJ started playing classic rock, and I realized I'd left my dad's retirement gift, an engraved vintage compass, in Mara's SUV. I walked out to the dark parking lot and opened her passenger door. Her iPad was sitting on the seat, screen illuminated because it was plugged into the car charger. It was open to her email drafts. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the subject line was in bold, glaring all caps. Please don't leave me in this mistake. I picked it up. It was a 2,000-word manifesto addressed directly to my dad. Mara wrote about how she'd been suffocating in our marriage since 2021. She explicitly confessed that she had been hopelessly in love with him for 4 years. She begged him to let her come to Montana. She wrote, I know you told me last summer to never speak of this again and to focus on my vow, but I can't let you drive away, knowing what we could be. My stomach violently inverted. Last summer, my dad knew. He had known my wife was throwing herself at him for over a year, and he kept his mouth completely shut. He let me continue paying our mortgage, let me continue signing my life away on this massive commercial firm with her, and let me sit at his dining table every Sunday like a fool. His sudden decision to flee to Montana wasn't a lifelong dream. It was an escape route. He was running away from my obsessive wife instead of just telling me the truth. I walked back into the lodge with the iPad clamped in my hand. Mara was by the buffet, laughing with my cousin. I pulled her into the kitchen corridor and shoved the screen into her chest. Are you packing for Montana? I asked, my voice shaking so hard I could barely speak. All the color drained from her face. She tried to grab the tablet, but I ripped it away. She started hyperventilating, whispering that it was just a stupid fantasy, that it meant nothing, that she was fully committed to our business and our future. He completely rejected you, I said coldly. And you're only crying tonight because he's actually leaving. I walked out the back emergency exit. I haven't spoken to either of them since. I've been staying at a Motel 6 by the airport for 3 days. My phone is a relentless stream of voicemails from Mara, begging me not to tank the commercial loan, and from my dad swearing he was only trying to protect my marriage by staying quiet. If I pull out of the firm now, Mara's parents lose their life savings, and I go bankrupt. But if I sign those papers, I am legally chaining myself for 30 years to a woman mourning the loss of my father. I am sitting on the edge of this bed, staring at the contract, knowing my choice will absolutely destroy my life. The AC unit in the wall rattled. It was a continuous metallic vibration that vibrated right through the cheap mattress and into my teeth. It smelled like wet dust and industrial bleach in here. Outside, a Boeing 737 roared overhead on its final approach to O'Hare, rattling the single-pane glass. I looked down at the documents spread across the stained floral bedspread. 62 pages. Small print. Signature lines marked with yellow sticky arrows. My name. Mara's name. The collateral breakdown. Page 41 detailed the escrow condition. If I didn't sign by next Wednesday, the bank walked. If the bank walked, the $150,000 earnest money we put down was forfeited to the seller. That money wasn't just mine and Mara's. Half of it came from Whitmore and Adele, her parents. Whitmore had spent 40 years running a wholesale plumbing supply warehouse just south of Cicero. His knees were shot. He was supposed to retire next spring. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. It buzzed against the faux wood laminate, loud and grating. I didn't recognize the number. It wasn't Mara, and it wasn't my dad. I let it ring. It stopped, then instantly buzzed again. Same number. I picked it up. Yeah, is this him? The voice was sharp, professional. It's Declan Thorne over at First Chicago Commercial. I've been trying to reach Mara all morning, but she's sending me straight to voicemail. I rubbed my eyes. She's tied up right now, Declan. What's going on? The underwriters flagged the final asset verification on the Whitmore account, Declan said. It's a minor discrepancy, just a missing statement from November. But I need either you or Mara to log into the portal and upload it by end of business today. Otherwise, it pushes the closing date, and if we push past Wednesday, your locked rate expires. We'll have to reevaluate the whole package at the current market rate, which will kill your margin. I stared at the peeling paint on the motel ceiling. My wife was in love with my father. My father was moving to a trailer in Montana to escape her, and I was on the phone with a guy in a tailored suit talking about locked interest rates. I'll handle it, I said. My voice sounded hollow, like it belonged to someone else. Great, I just need one of you to confirm via email once it's uploaded. Are we still good for the walkthrough on Thursday? I'll let you know, Declan. I hung up before he could ask another question. I tossed the phone onto the bed. It immediately lit up again. A voicemail notification. I had 22 unheard messages. I hadn't listened to a single one since I walked out of the Elks Lodge on Saturday night. I had just watched their names flash on the screen, over and over. Mara, Dad, Mara, Mara, Dad. I picked the phone back up and tapped the voicemail icon. I scrolled past Mara's frantic multi-minute messages and found the oldest one from my dad. Saturday night, 10:14 p.m. Right after I left. I pressed play and put the speaker to my ear. There was heavy breathing first, the sound of a truck engine idling in the background. My dad's old Ford. Son, it's me. His voice cracked. It sounded old, older than 58. She told me what you saw. I'm sitting in the parking lot. I don't know where you went. Listen to me. You have to listen to me. Nothing happened. I swear to you, on my life, on everything I did to raise you, nothing ever happened. She cornered me last July. After we finished the porch route, you had gone to get pizza. She had a few beers. She started talking crazy, saying she made a mistake, saying you were too corporate, too obsessed with the firm, and that she felt safe with me. I shut it down. I told her she was drunk and out of line. She tried to touch my face and I pushed her back. I told her if she ever spoke like that again, I'd never let her in my house. He paused. I could hear the turn signal clicking rhythmically in his truck. I should have told you. I know that now. But you were so happy, son. You were bringing me blueprints. You were talking about building an empire. I'm just a grease monkey. I didn't want to be the reason your marriage fell apart. I thought if I just put distance between us, if I got the hell out of Chicago, she'd snap out of it. She'd focus on you. I was trying to protect what you built. Call me, please. The message ended. The automated voice asked if I wanted to save or delete. I pressed delete. I didn't feel angry at that moment. I just felt sick. The betrayal was so much deeper than physical infidelity. They had colluded in my reality. For over a year, I had been the oblivious idiot at the dinner table. I remembered Thanksgiving. I remembered sitting in my dad's cramped living room, carving the turkey, while Mara carried dishes back and forth from the kitchen. I remembered her brushing past his shoulder. I remembered my dad standing up suddenly, making an excuse to go check the furnace in the basement. I had thought he was just being his usual restless, working-class self. They had both known. They had looked at me, smiled at me, and managed me. I grabbed my keys and my wallet. I couldn't stay in this room anymore. The walls were pressing in. I walked out into the harsh afternoon sunlight. The Motel 6 parking lot was mostly empty. Just a few beat-up sedans and a landscaping truck. My Honda was parked under a flickering security light. As I unlocked the door, another car pulled into the lot, a dark blue Subaru Outback. I froze with my hand on the handle. I knew that car. It rolled slowly over the speed bumps and parked 3 spaces away from me. The engine cut. The driver's side door opened. It was Reese, my cousin, the one Mara had been laughing with at the buffet right before I destroyed my life. Reese stepped out. He was wearing his work clothes, khakis and a polo with a logistics company logo on the chest. He looked uncomfortable. He shoved his hands into his pockets and walked over to me. Hey, Reese said. I stared at him. How did you know I was here? Reese looked down at the cracked asphalt. Mara, she called me this morning. She called my mom, too. She's calling everyone, man. She said you guys had a massive fight at the lodge and you took off. She said you're having a breakdown over the commercial loan. A dark, heavy heat spread through my chest. A breakdown. Yeah. Reese shifted his weight. She said you got spooked by the debt, that you're hiding out at an airport motel because you want to sabotage the firm. She tracked your phone location through your shared Verizon plan before you turned off the GP. Of course she did. Mara was meticulous. She was an engineer. She didn't let things fall apart. She managed the structural integrity of her lies. She was already spinning a narrative. If the loan fell through, it wouldn't be because she was desperately trying to sleep with her father-in-law. It would be because I was weak, because I couldn't handle the pressure. She sent you here? I asked. She asked me to just check on you, Reese said defensively. Make sure you haven't done anything crazy. Man, what the hell is going on? She's at the apartment in absolute hysterics. Her parents are driving up from Cicero right now. You're holding up $1 million deal. Did she tell you what we fought about? I asked quietly. Reese frowned. I just told you. The money. The firm. Right. I let go of my car door handle. I took a step toward him. She didn't mention the email? What email? I looked at my cousin. He was a good guy. He had a wife and a toddler in Naperville. He didn't deserve to be dragged into this sickness, but Mara was using him. She was deploying my own family to corral me back into the pen. Tell Mara I'm fine, I said. Tell her I'm not having a breakdown. Tell her I know exactly what I'm doing. Are you going to sign the paper? Reese pressed. Dude, I'm not trying to be a dick, but Whitmore put his life savings into this. If you walk away now, you ruin him. I know what I'm doing, I repeated. I got into my Honda, shut the door, and started the engine. Reese stood in the lot, watching me as I threw it into reverse and backed out. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't sit in that motel room anymore. I merged onto I-90, heading east toward the city. The traffic was heavy, a slow-moving river of metal and brake lights. My phone started ringing again through the Bluetooth speakers. Adele, Mara's mother. I let it ring for a long time. The sound filled the cabin of the car. I pictured Adele sitting in her immaculate living room in Cicero, the house she and Whitmore had paid off 10 years ago. They had refinanced it to give us that money. They believed in me. They believed in Mara. I tapped the screen and answered. Hello? Oh, thank God. Adele's voice came through the speakers, breathless and shaking. Thank God you picked up. Where are you? Mara is terrified. I'm driving, Adele. What is happening? Her voice cracked. She was crying. Mara said you left the party and went to a motel. She said, you're talking about canceling the loan. Please, tell me she's overreacting. Tell me this is just stress. I gripped the steering wheel. The leather was hot under my palms. Adele, Whitmore went to the doctor this morning. She rushed on, her words tumbling over each other. His blood pressure is through the roof. He can't sleep. The bank sent an alert about a missing document. Mara says you have the escrow ledger with the passwords in your briefcase. She can't log in. The ledger. She needed the November statement for Declan Thorne. The digital files were on the hard drive in my briefcase, which was sitting on the desk in the motel room. I have it, I said. Are you bringing it home? Adele pleaded. Please, just come home. Whatever fight you two had, you can work it out. You love each other. You've built so much together. Don't throw it all away because you're scared of the debt. Whitmore, and I believe in you. We gave you everything because we know you'll succeed. Every word she spoke was a physical weight on my chest. She was begging me to save the woman who had spent the last 4 years fantasizing about my father. I'm not scared of the debt, Adele, I said softly. Then what is it? Talk to me. I closed my eyes for a fraction of a second. I could end it right now. I could tell this crying woman the exact truth. I could tell her that her daughter wrote a 2,000-word manifesto begging an aging diesel mechanic to let her move into his Airstream trailer. I could nuke the entire thing from orbit. But if I did that, Whitmore still lost his money. The escrow was locked. If I blew up the marriage today, the deal died. The earnest money vanished, and a 70-year-old man with bad knees lost his retirement. I had to get the money out. There had to be a legal contingency, a way to extract Whitmore's funds before I burned the bridge to the ground. Tell Mara I'll handle the bank, I said. Tell her I'll upload the document. Oh, thank God, Adele sobbed. Thank you. Are you coming home tonight? No, I said. I'll handle the portal. That's it. I hung up. I took the next exit, looping back around toward the airport. I needed to look at the contract again. I needed to find a loophole. When I got back to the Motel 6, the parking lot was quiet again. Reese was gone. I parked in my spot and walked up the exterior concrete stairs to the second floor. I slid my keycard into the door. The green light blinked. I pushed it open. A man was sitting on the edge of the unmade bed. He was wearing steel-toed boots, stained Levi's, and a faded gray thermal shirt. His hands were resting on his knees. His knuckles were permanently stained with grease, a deep gray hue that no amount of industrial soap could ever scrub out. It was my dad. I stopped in the doorway. My heart hammered against my ribs. A sudden, violent rhythm. Door wasn't latched all the way, Sullivan said. His voice was gravelly. He didn't look at me. He was staring at the 62 pages of the commercial loan spread out across the mattress next to him. I stepped inside and let the heavy door click shut behind me. The AC unit hummed. Get out, I said. He slowly lifted his head. He looked exhausted. The deep lines around his eyes seemed carved into his face. He had aged 10 years in 3 days. I tracked your car, he said. I still had the location sharing on from when we drove down to St. Louis last month. Turn it off, I said, and get out of my room. He stood up. He was a big man, broad-shouldered from 40 years of pulling wrenches and lifting heavy equipment. But right now, he looked hollowed out. I'm not leaving until you look me in the eye, Sullivan said. I'm your father. I raised you. I never lied to you about anything that mattered. You lied to me every Sunday for a year, I shot back, my voice rising. I threw my keys onto the cheap laminate dresser. They hit the wood with a loud clatter. You sat at my table. You drank my beer. You watched me marry her. You watched me sign my life over to a commercial lease with her, knowing she cornered you on your back porch. I told her no, he said, his voice thickening with emotion. I shut her down immediately. I told her she was sick in the head. What was I supposed to do? Call you up while you were at the firm, working 80-hour weeks, and tell you your wife tried to put her hands on me? Yeah, I yelled. Yeah, that is exactly what you were supposed to do. And then what? He asked, stepping toward me. You would have lost everything. Your house, your business, your mind. I saw how much you loved her. I thought it was a temporary delusion. She had been drinking. She was stressed. I thought if I just ignored it, if I pushed her away and then removed myself from the equation, she would get over it. I was trying to save your life, not ruin it. You don't get to decide what my life is. I shoved him. I actually put my hands on my father's chest and shoved him backward. He stumbled slightly, hitting the edge of the cheap desk, but he didn't raise his hands to defend himself. He just took it. You managed me, I said, my voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You and her. You both knew this huge, ugly secret, and you just smiled at me. You let me risk Whitmore's retirement money. If you had told me last July, I never would have signed the initial letters of intent. I wouldn't be sitting here right now with $1.4 million hanging over my head. Sullivan looked down at the paperwork on the bed. He reached out and picked up the top page. She called me, he said quietly. The air in the room seemed to vanish. I stared at him. When? 2 hours ago, Sullivan said. He dropped the paper back onto the bed. She called me from a burner number. She knew I blocked her real one. She told me you found the email. She was crying. She told me you were at a motel and that you were going to let the loan default. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. What did you say to her? I told her she was a disease, my dad said, his voice devoid of any warmth. I told her that if you lost a single dime because of this, I would personally drive to her parents' house in Cicero and read the email to Whitmore and Adele myself. I blinked. She doesn't care about that. She's desperate. She cares, Sullivan said. He looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw a cold, hard anger in his eyes. Not at me, at her, because she told me something else. She told me that if I leave for Montana on Saturday without saying goodbye to her, she's going to tell everyone I initiated it. The room spun. I grabbed the back of the floral chair to steady myself. What? She said she'll flip the story, Sullivan said grimly. She said she'll tell you, and her parents, and the rest of the family that I've been making advances on her for years, that the email was just her playing along to try and let me down easy. She said it'll be the word of a successful young woman against a lonely, retired mechanic who couldn't handle living alone. I felt nauseous. The sheer, calculating malice of it was breathtaking. Mara wasn't just spiraling. She was building a containment strategy. She was building a kill switch. She knows you have the iPad, Sullivan said. She knows you read the draft, but she also knows it's ambiguous enough if she frames it right. She never explicitly said she started it in the text. She just said she couldn't stop thinking about what they could be. She's blackmailing you, I said numbly. She's trying to trap you, he corrected. She wants the firm. She wants the money. And she wants me to stay quiet so she can have her perfect life with you while keeping me around as her sick little fantasy. She told me if I just meet her for coffee tomorrow and tell her we can stay friends, she'll drop it. She'll be the perfect wife. He stepped closer to me. He put his heavy, calloused hands on my shoulders. I'm leaving for Montana tomorrow morning, Sullivan said. I bumped my timeline up. I'm taking the truck and I'm gone. I am removing myself from this entirely, so she has zero leverage over me. But you need to get out of this deal. I can't, I said, my voice cracking. If I walk away, Whitmore loses 75 grand. I lose everything. I'll be in debt for 10 years. Then you find a way to get Whitmore's money out, my dad said fiercely. You read every damn line of that contract. You find a loophole. Because if you sign that paper, you are tethered to a psychopath. You understand me? She is not the woman you married. She is broken inside. He let go of my shoulders. He looked around the depressing motel room, then looked back at me. I love you, Sullivan said. I am sorry I didn't tell you. It is the biggest regret of my life, but I am not going to let her destroy you. Figure out the money, then run. He walked to the door. He didn't look back. He opened it, stepped out into the afternoon heat, and shut it behind him. I stood alone in the room. The silence was deafening, broken only by the rattle of the axe. I walked over to the desk. My leather briefcase was sitting there. I unlatched it and pulled out my laptop. I opened it and booted it up. I had to log into the bank portal. I had to upload the November statement to keep Declan Thorne happy, to keep the loan alive for just a few more days while I figured out how to dismantle it. I opened the escrow ledger file. The passwords were encrypted in a shared drive Mara and I used. I typed in the master password. The drive opened. There were dozens of folders: blueprint, zoning permit, tax return, and a folder titled Personal M. I had seen it 100 times before. I had never clicked on it. It was her personal folder. Receipts, old college essays, recipes. I had respected her privacy. My hand hovered over the trackpad. She'll tell everyone I initiated it. I clicked the folder. It opened. Inside were hundreds of files, mostly JPEGs and PDF. I changed the view to large icons to see the thumbnail. My breath caught in my throat. They were photos, but not of her. They were photos of my dad, dozens of them, taken over the last 3 years. There was a picture of him changing the oil in my car, taken from the kitchen window of his house. There was a photo of his hands resting on the steering wheel of his truck, taken from the passenger seat. There was a video file. I double-clicked the video. It opened. It was 20 seconds long. It was from last Thanksgiving. My dad was standing by the stove, stirring gravy. The camera angle was low, like she was holding her phone by her waist under the counter. The audio picked up her voice. Looks good, Sullivan, she murmured softly in the video. My dad didn't turn around. Almost done. The camera zoomed in on his back, on the way his shirt pulled tight across his shoulders. Then the video ended. I felt a surge of pure, violent revulsion. It wasn't just a fantasy. It was an obsession. She had been documenting him, compiling him. I looked at the dates on the files. The most recent one was from 2 weeks ago. It was a photo of the Airstream trailer parked in my dad's driveway. But the angle was wrong. It was taken from the street, at night, from inside a car. She had been sitting outside his house. My phone vibrated on the desk next to the laptop. I jumped, startled. It was Mara. I stared at her name on the screen. The woman who slept next to me. The woman who kissed me every morning. The woman who was currently trying to frame my father as a predator because he rejected her. I answered it. I didn't say anything. I just held it to my ear. Hello, she said. Her voice was small, trembling, playing the victim. Are you there? I'm here, I said. My voice was completely flat. Reese told me, you're not having a breakdown, she said cautiously. He said you're fine. Are you coming home? No. Declan called me, she said, her voice picking up speed, tinged with panic. He said you agreed to upload the November statement. Did you do it? I'm doing it right now. I could hear her exhale a shaky breath of relief. Okay, good. That's good. We need to keep the timeline on track. I know you're mad. I know what you saw was horrible, but it was just a stupid, impulsive draft. I was stressed about the money, and I projected it onto him because he's safe, because he's your dad. It didn't mean anything. She was lying so smoothly. She had no idea what my dad had just told me. She had no idea I was staring at a secret hard drive full of surveillance photos. Did you call him? I asked. There was a beat of silence. Who? My dad. Did you call him today? Another beat. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head, calculating the structural load of the lie. No, Mara said softly. I haven't spoken to him since the party. Why? Just making sure, I said, staring at a thumbnail image of my father pulling his truck into his driveway, taken through the windshield of her SUV. Since you two were so close. We are close, she said quickly. Too quickly. I mean, we were, as family. I'm just respecting his space since he's stressed about the move. Did you upload the document yet? I'm opening the portal now. Okay, please, just come home after. We can sit down. We can order Thai food from that place you like on 43rd. We can just talk this through. I'm not giving up on it. I'll upload it, I said, and ended the call. I didn't close her personal folder. I dragged the entire thing onto my desktop, right-clicked, and compressed it into a zip file. Then I emailed it to a secure secondary address I had set up years ago for fantasy football leagues and junk mail. I watched the progress bar inch across the screen. 54 megabytes of my wife stalking my father. Once it's sent, I deleted the zip file from the desktop and emptied the trash. I left her original folder untouched on the shared drive. Let her think it was still her little secret. Then I opened the first Chicago commercial portal. I found the November statement in the accounting subfolder, uploaded it to Declan Thorne's Dropbox, and hit submit. The screen flashed a green checkmark. I picked up my phone and dialed Holt. Holt was a real estate attorney I'd met in grad school. He didn't handle our commercial loan. Mara had insisted on using a guy from her old firm, but Holt knew contract law inside and out. He picked up on the third ring. I could hear the clinking of silverware and the dull roar of a restaurant in the background. Hey, stranger, Holt said. You're supposed to be celebrating right now. Closing is next week, right? I need to ask you a hypothetical, I said. My voice was steady, but my hand was gripping the edge of the motel desk so hard my knuckles were white. Sounds ominous. Shoot, if a couple is closing on a commercial lease, and the earnest money, $150,000, was put up by the wife's parents as guarantors, what happens if the husband refuses to sign the final paperwork? Holt chewed something, swallowed. The bank walked. The deal died. And the earnest money? Gone. Holt said bluntly. Liquidated damages to the seller. Unless there's a financing contingency that hasn't expired, or the seller failed to disclose black mold or something. You forfeit the cash if you back out at the 11th hour. Why? Are you getting cold feet about the margins? What if the guarantors pull out? I asked, ignoring his question. What if Whitmore and Adele withdraw their backing today? Same result. Breach of contract. You lose the money. The only way the guarantors can claw that cash back without penalty is if one of the primary signers, you or Mara, is legally incapacitated, or if there's documented, provable fraud within the partnership prior to signing. I looked out the motel window. The sun was starting to set, casting long, dirty shadows across the cracked asphalt of the parking lot. Provable fraud, I repeated. Yeah, like if one partner was hiding massive undisclosed debt, or funneling business assets into a private account. Material deception that compromises the financial integrity of the partnership. But man, you don't want to go down that road. It's a bloodbath. It ties the money up in litigation for years, and the seller still usually walks away with a chunk of it. Holt paused. The background noise on his end seemed to quiet down. Is everything okay? You don't sound like yourself. Everything's fine, Holt. Just running worst-case scenarios. Thanks. I hung up before he could press further. I couldn't blow it up from my end without sinking Whitmore. And proving Mara's emotional infidelity and stalking didn't constitute financial fraud, no matter how sick it was. The bank didn't care who my wife wanted to sleep with. They only cared if she could pay the mortgage. There was only one way out. Mara had to be the one to cancel the deal. She had to be the one to call Declan Thorne and tell him to kill it. If she initiated the termination under a mutual release agreement with the seller, we might lose 10 or 20 grand in administrative penalties, but Whitmore would get the bulk of his life savings back. But Mara would never cancel it. She was obsessed with the firm. It was her baby, her empire, her justification for everything she did. She would rather burn me to the ground than let that loan default, unless she had no other choice. I packed up my laptop, shoved the commercial lease documents into my briefcase, and walked out of the room. I didn't bother checking out. I got into my Honda and merged onto I-55 South, heading towards Cicero. It took 40 minutes to reach Whitmore and Adele's neighborhood. It was a grid of modest, post-war brick bungalows with immaculately kept lawns. Whitmore had spent 40 years working his fingers to the bone to pay off his house, and he wore his pride in the perfectly edged sidewalks and the heavy oak front door. I parked at the curb. The driveway was empty, which meant Adele was probably at her evening bridge club. Whitmore's old Buick was parked in the detached garage out back. I walked up the concrete path. My heart felt like a block of lead in my chest. I knocked on the door. A minute later, the deadbolt clicked. Whitmore opened the door. He was wearing faded sweatpants and a white undershirt. He looked awful. His face was gray, the skin loose around his jaw, and he was leaning heavily on a cane he usually only used when his arthritis flared up in the winter. When he saw me, his shoulders slumped with palpable relief. Thank God, Whitmore rasped. He pushed the screen door open. Get in here. I've been waiting by the phone all day. I stepped into the foyer. The house smelled like lemon polish and old paper. The exact same smell it had carried since the first time Mara brought me here 6 years ago. Adele's not home, Whitmore said, limping toward the kitchen. She went to her sister's house to calm down. Mara had her so worked up this morning I thought Adele was going to have a stroke. He gripped the edge of the kitchen counter and looked at me, his eyes bloodshot. What the hell is going on between you two? Mara says you're trying to tank the firm because you're terrified of the debt. She says you've completely lost your nerve. That's not true, Whitmore. Then what is it? He demanded, his voice cracking. Because she's calling us sobbing, saying you left her at a party and checked into a motel. We put everything we have into this deal. Every dime of my retirement. If you walk away now, Adele and I have to take out a second mortgage just to survive the next 5 years. I looked at this man. He had treated me like a son from day one. He had bought me a set of custom drafting pens when I passed my licensing exam. He had toasted to my character at my wedding. I'm not going to let you lose your money, I said quietly. Then sign the papers, he pleaded. The bank just needs the final signatures on Thursday. Mara has been working herself to the bone for this. She loves you. She said you found some old email draft where she vented about your work hours, and you blew it completely out of proportion. I froze. She told you about the email? She said she wrote something stupid when she was drunk last year, Whitmore said, waving a hand dismissively, complaining about how much time you spend at the office, how she felt neglected. She said you found it on her iPad and went nuclear. Look, marriage is hard. People say things they don't mean when they're frustrated, but you don't throw away $1 million business and your family's future over a diary entry. I stared at the linoleum floor. The sheer, terrifying efficiency of her lies was suffocating. She had already inoculated her parents against the truth. She had framed the manifesto as a harmless, frustrated diary entry about my work habits. If I tried to tell Whitmore the truth now, it would just look like I was spinning a wild, paranoid counter-narrative to justify my breakdown. She had trapped me perfectly. Whitmore, I said, choosing my words with absolute precision. I need you to listen to me carefully. I am not having a breakdown. I am not afraid of the debt. But Mara and I, we are not going to make it. Whitmore's hand trembled on his cane. What are you saying? I'm saying the marriage is over, I said, holding his gaze. I cannot sign a 30-year commercial lease with her, but I refuse to let you and Adele take the fall for it. I am going to find a way to get your earnest money out of escrow, but I need you to trust me. Trust you? Whitmore's voice rose, a mix of panic and anger. You just stood in my kitchen and told me you're leaving my daughter over an argument, and you want me to trust that you're going to magically extract 150 grand from a locked bank escrow? Are you out of your mind? It's not an argument, I said. It's permanent. You're making a mistake, Whitmore warned, his knuckles turning white on the cane. Mara warned me you might be in a manic state. She said you haven't been sleeping. She said you've been acting paranoid for weeks. My blood ran cold. Manic state. Paranoid? She wasn't just managing the narrative. She was actively building a case against my mental health. If I showed anyone the photos or the email now, she would just point to it as proof of my delusions. She had probably already told Reese the same thing. I have to go, I said, backing out of the kitchen. Don't you walk out that door, Whitmore shouted, slamming his cane against the floorboard. If you ruin my daughter's life and you ruin my retirement, I swear to God I will drag you through every court in Illinois. I walked out of the house. I didn't look back. I heard him coughing heavily as I reached my car. I got in and slammed the door, my chest heaving. I couldn't just walk away, and I couldn't just tell the truth. Mara had weaponized my entire support system against me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text message. It was from my dad. Got the truck packed. Leaving at dawn. Don't let her win. Dad. I stared at the screen. He was leaving. My solitary hero, the guy who rebuilt transmissions in the snow to buy me winter coats, was fleeing his home because he didn't know how to fight a woman who manipulated reality for a living. He was running away to protect me, but running away wasn't going to fix this. I started the engine. I wasn't going back to the motel. I put the car in drive and headed north, back toward the city. I was going to our apartment. I was going to look my wife in the eye. The traffic on I-55 was heavy for a Monday night. I kept the radio off. My mind was running through the math, the contract, the lies. By the time I pulled into the underground garage of our South Loop building, My hands were steady. The shaking had stopped. I wasn't the confused, heartbroken husband who had stumbled out of the Elks Lodge 2 days ago. I was just a guy trying to defuse a bomb. I took the elevator up to the 14th floor. I unlocked the door. The apartment smelled like basil and roasted peanuts. She had actually ordered the Thai food. The cartons were set out on the kitchen island, still steaming, next to 2 plates and 2 wine glasses. A bottle of Pinot Noir was already open. Mara was standing by the floor to ceiling windows, looking out at the city skyline. She turned when the door clicked shut. She looked terrible, but in a carefully curated way. She was wearing my old college sweatshirt, the one she always wore when she wanted to seem small and approachable, and her hair was pulled back into a messy knot. Her eyes were red. "You came back," she said softly. I dropped my keys in the ceramic bowl by the door. I didn't take off my shoes. I walked into the kitchen and stopped on the opposite side of the island. The physical escrow documents were sitting right next to the pad Thai. 62 pages, printed, collated, and waiting for my pen. "Did you upload the document?" she asked, her eyes darting to my empty hands. I had left the briefcase in the car. "Yeah," I said. "Declan has it. The raid is locked." She let out a long, shuddering breath and crossed the room. She stopped a few feet away from me, wrapping her arms around herself. "Thank you. I know you're furious. I know you probably hate me right now, but thank you for not letting the business die over this." "Over this," I repeated. "It was a mistake," she pleaded, tears welling up in her eyes. "It was a spectacular performance. If I hadn't spent the last hour looking at covert surveillance photos of my father, I might have believed her. It was a stupid, drunken draft. I was so angry at you last year because you were working all those weekends, and Sullivan was just there. He was listening to me. I projected everything onto him, but I never sent it. I never acted on it. It was just a fantasy, and I am so sorry it hurt you. You told your parents I was having a manic episode," I said. She flinched, just a micro expression, a tiny tightening of the muscles around her mouth, but I caught it. "I was terrified," she said quickly. "You vanished. You wouldn't answer your phone. I didn't know what to tell them to explain why you were trying to throw away Whitmore's retirement. I panicked. You told Reese I was having a breakdown over the debt. I was trying to protect our privacy." She cried, stepping closer. "What was I supposed to say? My husband found an embarrassing diary entry and ran away? I was trying to manage the fallout so we could just sit down and fix this." I looked at the Thai food. I looked at the wine. I looked at the woman I'd spent the last 5 years of my life with. "You didn't talk to my dad today?" I asked. "No," she said, without missing a beat. "You didn't call him from a burner phone?" The color vanished from her face. She stopped moving. The silence in the kitchen suddenly felt incredibly heavy. The hum of the refrigerator seemed to amplify. "I don't know what you're talking about," she whispered. "He was at the motel, Mara," I said. My voice was calm, almost conversational. "He let himself in. He was sitting on my bed when I got back from driving around. We had a long talk." She swallowed hard. Her throat clicked. "He's lying. He's trying to cover his own tracks. He's the one who—" "Stop," I said. The single word cut through the air like a knife. "Just stop. You told him that if he didn't meet you for coffee tomorrow and agree to stay friends, you were going to tell everyone he initiated it. You told him you'd frame him as a predator." She stared at me. Her breathing was shallow and rapid. The victim routine was dissolving, melting away to reveal the cold structural engineering underneath. "He's a lonely old man," Mara said, her voice dropping an octave. The tremor was gone. "If this gets ugly, who do you think people are going to believe? Me? Or the guy who hasn't been with a woman in 25 years? He's obsessed with me. He's always touching my shoulder, always finding excuses to have me over." I saw the folder, Mara. She blinked. "What folder?" "On the shared drive. Personal M. I had to log in to get the November bank statement for Declan." I saw the folder. For the first time since I'd known her, Mara looked genuinely, physically terrified. She took a step backward, bumping into the edge of the sofa. "You have hundreds of photos of him," I said. "You have videos of him cooking Thanksgiving dinner from waist level. You have pictures of his truck taken from the street outside his house at night 2 weeks ago. You had no right to open that." She snapped, her voice shrill. "That's a breach of privacy. You stalked my father," I said. "You compiled a surveillance dossier on him while pretending to be the perfect wife, while trying to build a business with me. It's not stalking," she yelled, her composure totally fracturing. "I love him. I have loved him since the day we built that stupid back porch together. He actually sees me. He doesn't just see a business partner. He doesn't just see someone to co-sign commercial loans with. He looks at me like I'm a goddamn person. He looks at you like you're a disease," I said flatly. His exact words. She let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. She grabbed one of the wine glasses off the island and threw it. It wasn't aimed at me. It hit the stainless steel refrigerator and shattered into 100 pieces, raining glass and red wine across the hardwood floor. I didn't flinch. I just watched her. "He's leaving at dawn," I said. "He packed up his truck tonight. He's driving to Montana. And he is never coming back. He changed his number. You are never going to see him again." She sank onto the arm of the sofa, putting her hands over her face. She was shaking violently now, her shoulders heaving. It wasn't a performance this time. She was mourning. Right in front of me, she was mourning the loss of the man who had raised me. "So here's what's going to happen," I said. I picked up the stack of escrow documents from the island. "I'm not signing this." "You have to," she said through her hands. Her voice was muffled, broken. "If you don't sign, my parents lose everything." "No," I corrected her. "If I walk away, your parents lose everything. If I refuse to sign, I'm the one breaching the contract. But if you call Declan Thorne tomorrow morning, and you tell him that you are voluntarily withdrawing your application due to a material change in the partnership, and you sign a mutual release with the seller, Whitmore gets his earnest money back, minus a small penalty." She dropped her hand. Her face was streaked with mascara. "I'm not canceling the firm. Are you insane? That's my firm. I designed the entire structural rollout. That's my future. Your future is over, Mara. We are getting divorced. You can't do this to me." She screamed, surging to her feet. "You can't take the business away from me over this. I'll go to therapy. I'll delete the folder. I'll never speak to him again, I swear to God. Just sign the papers on Thursday, and we can separate later. You can buy me out, but if we default now, we get nothing. If you don't cancel the loan tomorrow," I said, my voice dropping to a dead calm, "I will file for a fault-based divorce, citing extreme mental cruelty. And during the discovery phase, my lawyer will subpoena the shared drive. I will make the personal M folder a matter of public court record. I will show the judge the photos. I will show Whitmore the photos. I will show Reese and Adele and every single person you called today to tell them I was having a manic episode." She stared at me, her mouth open, but no sound came out. "You are going to call Declan Thorne at 9 am," I told her. "You are going to take the blame for the collapse of the deal. You are going to tell your parents that you made a massive financial miscalculation and you had to pull the plug to save their money. You are going to let them think you are a failure, but you are going to get them their money back. They'll hate me," she whispered. "My dad will never forgive me if I tell him I blew the deal. Then he'll hate you for being a bad businesswoman," I said, "which is infinitely better than him knowing his daughter is a predator who stalked her own father-in-law." I dropped the escrow papers back onto the island. They landed with a heavy, satisfying thud. "I'm packing a bag," I said. "I'm staying at a hotel downtown until you move out. Don't call me. Don't text me. Have your lawyer contact Holt." I walked past her, my boots crunching on the broken glass, and headed toward the bedroom. I pulled my duffel bag from the top shelf of the closet and started throwing clothes into it. I didn't care what I was taking. Shirts, socks, a pair of jeans. I just needed to be out of this space. As I zipped the bag shut, I heard the front door open and close. I walked out of the bedroom. The apartment was empty. Mara was gone. The Thai food was still sitting on the counter, growing cold. I grabbed my bag and walked out. I didn't know where she went, and I didn't care. The only thing that mattered was that she called the bank in the morning. I drove to a Marriott a few miles north, checked into a room on the 10th floor, and threw my bag on the floor. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't order room service. I just lay down on the bed fully clothed and stared at the ceiling. At 6:00 a.m., my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a picture message from my dad. It was a shot taken from the cab of his Ford, looking out over the steering wheel at a long, empty stretch of interstate, just as the sun was starting to break over the horizon. There was no text attached, just the proof that he was gone, putting miles between himself and the wreckage in Chicago. I set the phone down and waited. 9 o'clock came and went. 9:30, 10. I paced the hotel room. If she didn't make the call, I was going to have to make good on my threat. I didn't want to destroy Whitmore, but I couldn't let her trap me. At 10:45 a.m., my phone rang. It was Holt. I answered it immediately. Did you hear from her lawyer? No, Holt said. His voice sounded strained. Tight. I didn't hear from a lawyer. I just heard from the Cook County Clerk's office. A buddy of mine works down there in the commercial filings division. Okay, I said, my stomach tightening. Did she file the mutual release for the escrow? No, Holt said slowly. She didn't file a release. She filed an emergency injunction to freeze all partnership assets, and she submitted a supplementary affidavit from a doctor. I stopped pacing. The hum of the hotel air conditioner suddenly sounded incredibly loud. A doctor? She's petitioning the court for temporary medical conservatorship over your financial decisions regarding the firm, Holt said, his tone dead serious now. She's claiming you've suffered an acute psychiatric break. She submitted an affidavit from a private psychiatrist stating that based on your recent erratic behavior, sudden disappearance, and documented paranoia about your family members, you are a danger to your own financial well-being and the guarantor's assets. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. She hadn't broken. She had doubled down. She's trying to force the deal through without my signature, I realized. The sheer audacity of it taking my breath away. If the judge grants the temporary conservatorship based on the medical affidavit, Holt warned, she can sign the escrow release on your behalf. The loan closes. You're locked in. She just hijacked your entire exit strategy. Can she actually do that? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. It's an ex-parte emergency motion, Holt said, his tone clipped and professional now. The friendly grad school buddy was gone. The attorney was clocking in. Yes, she can do it. In a commercial dispute involving significant imminent financial loss, like a $4 million default, if one partner presents compelling medical evidence that the other is incapacitated, a judge can grant a temporary stay. It's designed to stop someone with dementia or severe mania from accidentally bankrupting their family. It only lasts until a formal hearing, but that hearing might not be scheduled for 14 days. The loan closes on Thursday, I said numbly. Exactly. If the judge signs the temporary order this afternoon, she has the legal authority to sign the final escrow release on your behalf tomorrow morning. The loan fund, the business opens. You are legally bound to the debt. I gripped the phone. Who is the doctor, Holt? Who signed an affidavit saying I had a psychiatric break? I haven't seen a therapist in my life. My primary care guy is an internist at Northwestern who just checks my cholesterol. Hold on, let me pull up the docket scan, Holt muttered. I heard the clacking of a keyboard. Okay, affidavit of medical necessity, signed by Dr. Soren Aldrich. I closed my eyes. The name clicked perfectly into place. I know him, I said, the sick realization washing over me. He's not my doctor. He's Mara. He's a clinical psychiatrist she used to see for anxiety back in 2021 when she was studying for her final engineering board. They stayed friendly. He came to our wedding. Jesus Christ, Holt breathed. She got a friend to sign it? She manipulated him, I said, staring at the blank hotel room wall. She's been laying the groundwork for this for weeks. She probably called him, crying, telling him I was acting erratic, that I wasn't sleeping, that I was having paranoid delusions about my family. She fed him a narrative, and he rubber-stamped it as a professional opinion because he knows her, because he trusts her. That's highly unethical, Holt said. If he hasn't physically examined you, he can't make a definitive diagnostic claim in a legal affidavit. He didn't make a definitive claim, I guessed. Knowing how Mara worked, he probably framed it as an urgent clinical recommendation based on reported secondary observation. Just enough legal jargon to give the judge cover to grant a temporary hold. You're right, that's exactly how it's phrased. Observed indicators of acute paranoia necessitating temporary protective conservatorship. Holt sighed heavily. Listen to me. You need a family law litigator, and you need one 20 minutes ago. I do commercial real estate. I can't fight an injunction in probate court. Do you know someone? Sylvie Calloway. She's a partner on the 7th floor of my building. She's vicious, she's fast, and she hates this kind of bad faith litigation. I'm texting her your cell number right now. Get out of that hotel and get down to my office. We are not letting her steal your signature. I'm on my way. I hung up. I didn't bother unpacking my duffel bag. I just grabbed my briefcase and my keys and walked out of the room. When I got to the elevator, I pulled out my wallet to make sure I had my parking ticket for the garage next door. My debit card was sitting in its usual slot. On a dark, paranoid impulse, I opened the Chase banking app on my phone. Face ID scanned, and the dashboard loaded. My stomach dropped. Our joint checking account, which usually held around $18,000 for household expenses and mortgage payments, was at zero. I tapped the transaction history. At 8:14 a.m. this morning, exactly an hour before she was supposed to call the bank and cancel the commercial loan, Mara had initiated a wire transfer. She moved every single cent into an external account at a different bank, an account my name wasn't on. She wasn't just trying to force the business deal through. She was choking off my resources, so I couldn't fight the injunction. She wanted me broke, isolated, and legally declared incompetent. I took the elevator down to the lobby and walked out into the humid Chicago morning. I had $80 in cash in my wallet, a personal credit card with a $5,000 limit that I strictly used for gas, and whatever was left in my old personal checking account from before we got married, maybe $3,000. It wasn't enough to fight a prolonged legal battle against a woman who had just weaponized her parents' life savings and a doctor's affidavit. I drove downtown, parked in the underground garage of Holt's building on LaSalle Street, and took the elevator up to the 34th floor. Holt was waiting for me in the glass-walled lobby. He looked stressed, his tie loosened, a half-empty coffee cup in his hand. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He swiped his keycard and led me down a long, carpeted hallway to a corner conference room. A woman was sitting at the massive oak table, typing rapidly on a silver laptop. She looked up as we walked in. She was in her late 40s, wearing a tailored navy blazer, her dark hair pulled back into a severe clip. Sylvie, Holt said. This is him. Sylvie Calloway didn't smile. She closed her laptop and folded her hands on the table. Sit down, both of you. We have less than 4 hours before Judge Devereaux reviews the morning filings in chamber. I pulled out a leather chair and sat. I put my briefcase on the table. Holt gave me the broad strokes, Sylvie said, her voice sharp and direct. Your wife filed an emergency motion for temporary medical conservatorship. She drained your joint accounts this morning to dry you out. She is alleging you are having a manic episode characterized by paranoid delusion. Let me ask you a very simple question, and I need a very simple answer. Are you? No. Have you ever been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, or any condition that causes psychosis? Never. Have you sent her any text messages, emails, or voicemails in the last 72 hours that sound unhinged, threatening, or disjointed? I thought back to the few conversations we'd had, the coldness, the precision. No, I barely spoke to her. I told her I was leaving, and I told her to cancel the loan. That's it. Good. Sylvie leaned forward. Judges in Cook County hate granting ex parte conservatorships unless there's a literal smoking gun, a suicide attempt, an arrest, a hospitalization. Dr. Aldrich's affidavit is weak. It's based entirely on hearsay provided by the petitioner. But because there's $1.4 million in third-party guarantors involved, The judge might err on the side of caution and freeze the status quo. If he grants the stay, she signs the paperwork on Thursday, and your goose is cooked. We have to file a counter-emergency motion to block the injunction before Devereaux reviews it at 2 p.m. On what grounds? I asked. On the grounds that the petitioner is committing perjury to secure a commercial advantage, Sylvie said flatly. We argue that she manufactured the medical crisis to circumvent your legal right to refuse the debt. But to do that, I need proof. Not just you saying she's a liar. I need to prove to the judge why she would suddenly invent a psychiatric crisis. She looked me dead in the eye. Holt said you found something. He didn't say what. Tell me what happened. I looked at Holt. He gave me a single, encouraging nod. I unlatched my briefcase. I pulled out my laptop and set it on the oak table. My wife is in love with my father, I said. Sylvie didn't blink. Go on. It's not a mutual affair. It's a one-sided obsession. My dad rejected her. He bought land in Montana, and he left the state this morning to get away from her. On Saturday night, I found an email draft on her iPad. It was a 2,000-word manifesto begging him to let her leave me and move into his trailer. Sylvie took a notepad and a silver pen from her portfolio. Do you have a copy of this email? No. I confronted her with the iPad, but she kept it. She probably deleted it the second I walked out the door. Sylvie frowned. That's a problem. Without the email, it's a he said, she said domestic dispute. She'll just say, you imagined the email, which perfectly supports her narrative that you're suffering from paranoid delusions. I don't have the email, I said. I opened the laptop and pressed the power button, but I have the surveillance folder. Sylvie stopped writing. The what? The screen lit up. I logged into my junk email account. I found the sent folder and clicked on the email I had sent myself from the Motel 6. I downloaded the zip file to the desktop, extracted it, and opened the folder marked Personal M. I turned the laptop around so it faced Sylvie and Holt. She used a shared hard drive for our business files, I explained, my voice steady despite the adrenaline pounding in my ears. She kept a personal folder in there. I opened it yesterday. She has been secretly photographing and filming my father for 3 years. Sylvie stared at the screen. She clicked the trackpad, enlarging the thumbnails. The photo of my dad changing the oil, the video of him cooking Thanksgiving dinner, the shot of his truck parked in his driveway, taken from the dark interior of Mara's SUV. Holt leaned over to look. He let out a low, disgusted breath. Jesus, man. Look at the metadata, I told Sylvie. Right-click the image of the truck and hit Get Info. Sylvie did. A small gray box popped up. Date created, I said. June 8, 2 weeks ago. Time, 11:42 p.m. Location data is tagged. It's the GPS coordinates for the street outside my dad's house in Southside. She told me she was working late at the firm that night. Sylvie scrolled through the folder in total silence. She clicked on another video, a 4-second clip of my dad walking across his backyard, filmed through a gap in a wooden fence. The sheer predatory nature of the files was undeniable when viewed all at once. This is it, Sylvie said softly. She looked up at me, her eyes gleaming with professional predatory instinct. This breaks the affidavit in half. How? Holt asked. It's creepy as hell, but how does it prove she's lying about his mental state? Because it establishes motive for the fabrication, Sylvie explained rapidly. We present this to Judge Devereaux in an emergency counterfiling. We argue that the husband discovered this folder on Saturday night. He confronted the wife with evidence of her severe pathological obsession with his father. He informed her he was terminating the marriage and the commercial partnership. In a desperate attempt to retain control of the business assets and punish him for the discovery, the wife immediately drained the accounts and manipulated a former doctor into signing a bogus psychiatric hold. She tapped the screen. We frame her as the one who has lost touch with reality. We tell the judge that if anyone needs a psychiatric evaluation before signing a 30-year commercial lease, it's the woman stalking her elderly father-in-law. Will it work? I asked. It will at least force Devereaux to pause, Sylvie said. He won't grant the conservatorship today. He'll order an evidentiary hearing. That buys us time. If we delay past Thursday, the bank's lock expires. The deal defaults. And Whitmore loses his earnest money, I said, the heavy reality crashing back down on me. Sylvie stopped. She looked at Holt, then back at me. Whitmore is the guarantor? Your father-in-law? Yeah, he put up $150,000. It's his entire retirement fund. If I blow up the deal, the seller keeps the cash as liquidated damages. I told Mara I wouldn't sign, but I offered her a way out. I told her if she voluntarily withdrew the application under a mutual release, her dad would get the money back, minus a penalty. Instead of doing that, she tried to legally lobotomize me. Sylvie sat back in her chair. She rubbed her temple. Okay, this complicates things. Why? Because if we file this counter motion with these photos attached, it becomes public record, Sylvie said bluntly. The second I file it, anyone can request the docket. And more importantly, to justify the emergency block, I have to serve the counter filing to all interested parties. That includes the petitioner's legal counsel, the bank, and the financial guarantors. I felt the blood drain from my face. You have to serve Whitmore? He's a primary stakeholder in the escrow, Sylvie said. If I am petitioning a judge to block the execution of a contract that directly impacts his $150,000, he is legally entitled to the filing. The court clerk will email him the PDF of our motion within an hour of us submitting it. He will read the motion. He will see the metadata. He will see the photos of his daughter stalking your father. The room went completely silent. I pictured Whitmore, leaning heavily on his cane in his kitchen in Cicero, his face gray with stress. I pictured Adele, crying on the phone, begging me to come home. They thought I was having a breakdown. They thought I was throwing their future away because I was scared of a little debt. If Sylvie filed this, I wouldn't just be stopping Mara. I would be detonating a nuclear bomb in the middle of her parents' living room. I would be showing a proud, working-class man that his daughter was a predator. Is there another way? I asked, my voice tight. Can we file it under seal? Keep it away from them? To seal a filing, you need a separate hearing, which takes days, Sylvie said. We don't have days. We have 3 hours. You have to make a choice right now. You can protect your father-in-law's feelings, let the injunction go through, and spend the next 30 years paying off $1 million debt with a woman who belongs in a locked ward. Or, we file this, blow her affidavit out of the water, and let the chips fall where they may. I looked at the laptop screen, the image of my dad's truck. Mara hadn't cared about my dad's feelings when she cornered him on his porch. She hadn't cared about my sanity when she told her family I was manic. She was willing to put me in a legal straitjacket just to keep her architectural firm. File it, I said. Sylvie didn't hesitate. I need you to sign a retainer. My paralegal will draft the affidavit. We'll attach the digital files as exhibits A through D. Holt, I need you to draft a formal notice of contest to First Chicago Commercial. Let Declan Thorne know there is an active legal dispute over the competency of the signer. That will freeze the underwriters. Holt nodded, standing up. On it. I'll need a retainer fee, Sylvie said to me, her tone apologetic but firm. 5,000. Can you wire it? She drained my accounts, I reminded her. I have my old personal checking. It has maybe $3,000 in it. Give me 2, Sylvie said. We'll figure the rest out later. Let's get to work. For the next 2 hours, the conference room turned into a war room. Sylvie's paralegal, a young guy named Caspian, rushed in and out with printed drafts. I sat at the table, answering rapid-fire questions about timelines, the Elks Lodge party, the specific layout of the shared hard drive. I signed my name 6 times on legal declarations under penalty of perjury. At 1:15 p.m., Sylvie reviewed the final master document. It was a brutal piece of legal machinery. It systematically dismantled Dr. Soren Aldrich's credibility, laid out the timeline of my discovery of the personal M folder, and explicitly requested the court deny the conservatorship and sanction the petitioner for fraudulent filing. I'm submitting it to the clerk's portal now, Sylvie said, her finger hovering over her mouth. She looked up at me. Once I clicked it, it's out there. Whitmore will get the automated notification. You ready? I thought about the Thai food sitting on the counter in our apartment. I thought about the way she looked at me when she said, if this gets ugly, who do you think people are going to believe? Do it, I said. Sylvie clicked the mouse. Submitted, she said. She closed her laptop. Now, we wait. I walked out of the conference room and went to the small kitchen area down the hall to get a glass of water. My hands were shaking slightly. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, replaced by a hollow, terrifying exhaustion. I had just initiated a total war. There was no going back to the apartment. There was no quiet divorce. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. The caller ID flashed a name I hadn't expected to see. Reese. I stared at the screen. Why was my cousin calling me in the middle of a workday? I swiped to answer. Yeah, where are you? Reese demanded. His voice was breathless, panicked. The background noise was chaotic. The screech of tires, the roar of a siren in the distance. I'm downtown, at a lawyer's office. Why? What's going on? It's Whitmore, Reese said. The glass of water slipped from my hand. It shattered against the tile floor, splashing cold water against my jeans. What happened? I asked, my voice dropping to a harsh rasp. He showed up at your dad's house, Reese said rapidly, the panic bleeding through the phone. He drove all the way from Cicero. My mom called me. She said Adele called her screaming. Whitmore got some kind of email from the court. He read it, and he just snapped. He got in his Buick and drove straight to Southside. My dad isn't there, I said, my heart slamming against my ribs. He left for Montana this morning. The house is empty. No, it's not, Reese yelled over the noise. He didn't leave. His truck broke down on I-80. He had it towed back to the house 2 hours ago. I'm pulling up to the street right now. Whitmore's car is parked on the lawn. The front door is wide open. I didn't wait for the elevator. I shoved my phone into my pocket, pushed through the heavy fire doors of Holt's building, and took the concrete stairs 3 at a time, down to the parking garage. I threw myself into my Honda, tires screaming against the slick-painted concrete, as I whipped up the ramp and out into the Chicago daylight. The drive to the south side was a blur of aggressive lane changes and laying on the horn. My chest felt tight, the adrenaline burning cold in my veins. Whitmore was a 70-year-old man with bad knees and high blood pressure, but he was also a father who believed his daughter had just been victimized by an older man. He had a temper, and Sullivan, despite his size, would never raise a hand to an old man. He would just stand there and take it. I turned onto my dad's street and slammed on the brakes. Reese wasn't exaggerating. Whitmore's heavy Buick was parked diagonally across the front lawn, the front bumper resting inches from Sullivan's overgrown hydrangeas. The driver's side door was hanging wide open. Reese's Subaru was parked legally at the curb. Reese was standing on the bottom step of the porch, running his hands through his hair, looking terrified. I killed the engine and sprinted across the grass. I tried to stop him, Reese said as I blew past him. He shoved right past me. He's got the court filing on his phone. I stepped through the open front door. The house smelled like stale coffee and motor oil, exactly as it always had. The shouting was coming from the kitchen. You sick, manipulative piece of garbage. Whitmore's voice was a raw, wet scream. It echoed off the cramped hallway walls. She is a young woman. She's my daughter. You took advantage of her because you're a lonely, old, pathetic mechanic. I rounded the corner into the kitchen. Whitmore was standing in the center of the faded linoleum, leaning heavily on his cane. His face was a dangerous, mottled purple. His other hand was clutching his smartphone, the screen brightly illuminated with the PDF of Sylvie's emergency injunction. Sullivan was backed up against the kitchen sink. He was wearing his stained work jacket, holding a wrench in his left hand. He must have been working on the truck when Whitmore barged in. He wasn't holding the wrench like a weapon. It was just hanging at his side. He looked exhausted. His broad shoulders slumped. His eyes locked on Whitmore with a mix of pity and deep, resigned sadness. I didn't touch her, Sullivan said softly, his gravelly voice remarkably calm. I never laid a finger on her. I told her to stay away from me. Don't you lie to me. Whitmore slammed his cane against the floor. I read the filing. I saw the picture. You had her taking pictures of you. You lured her into some twisted psychological game to ruin my son-in-law's marriage. Whitmore, I said loudly, stepping into the room. Whitmore whipped around. His eyes were wide, wild with grief and rage. When he saw me, he pointed a trembling finger at my chest. He spat. You filed this? You put this filth in a public court record? You let this old bastard seduce your wife, and then you try to blame her for it? Nobody seduced her, Whitmore, I said, keeping my voice low and steady. I walked toward him, placing myself deliberately between him and my father. Look at me. Look at my face. Do I look like a man who is having a manic episode? Whitmore stared at me, his chest heaving. She said you were out of your mind. She had a doctor's note. She got a friend to sign a bogus affidavit so she could legally steal my signature on Thursday, I told him, stepping closer. She drained our joint bank accounts at 8 o'clock this morning, so I couldn't afford to hire a lawyer to stop her. She was going to freeze me out, sign the commercial lease using my name, and lock your retirement money into a 30-year debt with a man she was having committed. Does that sound like a woman who is scared and confused, or does that sound like a structural engineer executing a demolition? Whitmore's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The purple flush in his cheeks was starting to fade, replaced by a sickly, ashen gray. Look at the pictures again, I told him. I pointed to the phone shaking in his hand. Look at the video of Thanksgiving. She was filming him from under the counter while he was cooking. Look at the timestamp on the picture of the truck. It was midnight. My dad was asleep inside. She was sitting in her car on the street, watching his house in the dark. Whitmore slowly lowered his arm. He looked down at the bright screen. He squinted at the metadata printed clearly on the second page of the exhibit. I bought land in Montana, Sullivan said quietly from behind me. I put my house on the market and I packed my life into a trailer because I was terrified of what she would do to him if I stayed. I left this morning. My radiator blew on the interstate. That's the only reason I'm standing here right now. The silence that followed was total. Even the ambient noise of the street outside seemed to vanish. I watched the exact moment Whitmore's reality shattered. It wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow, agonizing deflation. The anger drained out of him, leaving nothing but the brittle, hollow shell of a father, realizing that the daughter he had sacrificed everything for was fundamentally broken. His cane slipped slightly on the linoleum. He stumbled, catching himself on the edge of the Formica dining table. He pulled out one of the vinyl chairs and collapsed into it. He put his phone face down on the table, covered his face with his large, liver-spotted hands, and let out a single, gut-wrenching sob. It was the worst sound I have ever heard in my life. I didn't comfort him. I didn't touch his shoulder. I just stood there, letting the terrible weight of the truth settle over the room. Suddenly, the phone on the table began to buzz. It vibrated violently against the cheap wood. Whitmore slowly lowered his hands. He looked at the screen. The caller ID flashed. Mara Mobile. She had seen the filing. The clerk's office had processed the email. She knew the injunction was contested, and she knew her father had the exhibits. Whitmore stared at the phone. He looked up at me. His eyes were wet, red-rimmed, and completely dead. He picked up the phone and answered it, putting it on speaker. Dad, Mara's voice filled the kitchen. She was hyperventilating, the words rushing out in a frantic, panicked stream. Dad, listen to me. Whatever you just read, it's a lie. He manufactured those dates. He hired some sleazy lawyer to doctor the files. I'm at the apartment right now. I can explain everything. You just have to. I'm at Sullivan's house, Mara, Whitmore said. His voice was a rasping whisper. The line went dead silent. Only the faint hiss of static remained. Dad, she finally whispered, the panic replaced by a cold, sinking dread. What are you doing there? I'm looking at him, Whitmore said, staring at my father. I'm looking at a man who had to run away from his own home because my daughter is sick in the head. Dad, please, did you take my money this morning? Whitmore asked. his voice cracking. Did you try to force the bank to take my retirement while you told me your husband was losing his mind? I was trying to save the firm, she cried, abandoning the lie, pivoting instantly to justification. I was trying to protect your investment. If he backed out, you would have lost it all. I did it for us. You did it for yourself, Whitmore said. He closed his eyes. Tears leaked through his tightly squeezed lids, rolling down his gray cheek. You are not the girl I raised. I don't know what you are. Dad, don't do this. I'm your daughter. The loan closes on Thursday. We can fix this. Please don't let him ruin my life. I'm calling the bank, Mara, Whitmore said heavily. I'm calling Declan Thorne. I'm telling him I'm withdrawing my financial guarantee due to fraudulent partnership practices. I don't care about the penalty. I don't care about the earnest money. I am cutting the cord. If you do that, I'm bankrupt, she screamed, the mask entirely gone, revealing the pure, selfish terror underneath. You're destroying my future. You destroyed it, Whitmore said. He tapped the red button, ending the call. He sat there for a long time, staring at the blank screen. Then, he slowly pushed himself up from the chair, leaning heavily on his cane. He didn't look at me, and he didn't look at Sullivan. He just shuffled toward the hallway. Whitmore, I said. He stopped in the doorway, his back to me. Tell your lawyer to send the paperwork, Whitmore said. His voice was hollow, stripped of all its former booming warmth. I'll sign whatever you need. Just, don't call me again, please. He walked out the front door. A minute later, I heard the heavy engine of his Buick start, the tires tearing up a chunk of my dad's lawn as he backed out into the street and drove away. Reese appeared in the doorway a few seconds later. He looked from me to my dad, his face pale. Is everyone okay? Yeah, Reese, I said, exhaling a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 3 days. It's over. Go home to your wife. Reese nodded slowly, turned, and left. I stood in the kitchen with my dad. The house was quiet again. Sullivan walked over to the sink, picked up a rag, and slowly wiped the grease off his wrench. He looked out the window at the empty spot on the lawn where the Buick had been. His radiator is fine, I said quietly. Sullivan stopped wiping the wrench. He didn't turn around. I saw the tow truck drop your Ford off, I told him. I know how a blown radiator sounds. Your truck sounded perfectly fine when he backed it into the driveway. You didn't break down on I-80. Sullivan set the wrench down on the counter. He leaned heavily against the sink, staring out at the small, fenced-in backyard where I had spent my entire childhood. I got to Joliet, he said, his gravelly voice thick with emotion. I pulled over at a rest stop. I bought a coffee. I sat on the tailgate of my truck, and I looked at the highway. He finally turned to face me, and I realized I was leaving my son in a war zone. He shook his head, a bitter smile touching the corners of his mouth. I spent my whole life making sure you had a stable foundation, making sure you didn't grow up broken just because your mother walked out. And here I was, driving away to hide in the woods while that woman tried to tear you down to the studs. So I turned around. I called a tow truck a mile from the house so she wouldn't see me driving in if she was watching. I wasn't going to let you fight her alone. I felt a tight, hard knot in my chest finally dissolve. The absolute suffocating isolation of the last 3 days vanished. I wasn't the idiot husband anymore. I was my father's son. You don't have to fight her, I said. Whitmore just killed the deal. Without the guarantor, the bank drops the loan. She has no leverage, no firm, and no money. Sylvie will take the conservatorship to the judge tomorrow and have it dismissed with prejudice. It's done. Sullivan looked at me, his deep-set eyes searching my face. What about you? I'm going to file for divorce, I said. And I'm going to take half of whatever is left in that external account she opened this morning. My dad nodded slowly. He walked over to the refrigerator, pulled open the door, and grabbed 2 cheap domestic beers. He twisted the caps off, handed one to me, and leaned back against the counter. I still have the land in Montana, he said, taking a slow pull from the bottle. 10 acres, lots of timber. Going to need to build a cabin out there eventually. Might need an architect to draw up some load-bearing plans. I looked at him. I looked at the stained work jacket, the permanently greased knuckles, the tired lines around his eyes. He had sacrificed his youth to raise me, and he had almost sacrificed his retirement to protect me. I charge a premium for off-grid design, I said, clinking my bottle against his. I'll pay you in transmission repairs, he replied. We stood in the cramped kitchen, drinking our beers in the quiet house. Outside, the Chicago traffic hummed along the street, loud and relentless. But inside, the foundation was solid. The rot was gone, and for the first time in 5 years, I could finally see the horizon.